My name is Carmen Pereira Muro. I'm a professor in classical modern languages and literatures. I teach Spanish, literature of the 19th century, and I do research on nationalism and gender, mostly on the 19th century, but also I'm interested in, all phenomenon related to nationalism. And as you know, Spain has been in the news lately because of Catalonia, exactly. So my talk today is a little bit of a compromise. No, it's an attempt to put into context, into a long context, you will see, the cultural diversity and the cultural conflict we have today. So we understand that Catalonia is not an isolated nationalism in Spain, and also like how history, geography, development of language has shaped what Spain is today. Lars, you are yawning. Okay, so the title of the lecture is very Galician. I am from Galicia, is a region in the northwest of Spain, and we are famous for never giving straight answers. We always give questions. So as you will see, there is not an answer also to this lecture today. So what is Spain? No? Is Spain a nation of nations? Is a mosaic of cultures? Or is an unfinished project? No? And I decided to choose the last question as the general title of the lecture today, an unfinished project, because I think it's more hopeful. It's like there is something to keep working with. So, well, I know many of you know a lot about Spain, but many times, we have like general, vague ideas about countries, and these are some of the stereotypes that are usually associated with Spain. So what do we see here, for example? What are some of the things? What is bullfighting and paella and flamenco and olive oil. Spain, main producer in the world, not Italy. So olive oil and the guitar and the wine and of course football, soccer. So if I ask my students in a basic level of Spanish, what do they know about Spain? The answers are usually they know about football, they know about toros, they know playa, sol, fiesta, flamenco, paella, sangria, maybe they have been there. But my job, as their teacher, as the lecturer today, is to, try to avoid all the stereotypes and focus in the complexity of Spanish history. And what we have here is a map of Roman Spain. And you can see already here in the way the Romans organized administration of Spain, what later would become some of the main parts or regions of Spain. Galaecia in the north, Tarraconensis was all the east, and later on it will become the Kingdom of Aragon. But just to give you an idea, how already civilized and communicated was in Roman times. So some basic notions. Before the Roman conquest, the Iberian Peninsula, as later will be known, was a mosaic of many peoples, and Iberians and, you say Celts or Celts in English? Celts? And Celts were two of the main groups. There were many, but Iberian will give the name to the peninsula. By the 2nd century, Iberia becomes a province of the Roman Empire. The name is Hispania. We get España from that. And for the first time, the peninsula becomes a political unit. And this Roman colonization meant the first blueprint of future Spain at all levels. The roads, if you put the map I put at the beginning together with the Roman map, we can see all the Roman vías are basically following the map of roads that today, the modern roads in Spain. Cities, provinces, architecture, language, Spanish comes from Latin, laws and agricultural specialties like olive oil, for example. So these are two of the main myths that inform the idea of Spain that will develop in modernity. The idea of a creation and a loss of Spain. So by the 5th century, the Roman Empire falls, the barbarians, the so-called barbarians, take over the different provinces, and the barbarians that we get are the Visigoths. And they establish a kingdom, they call it España, so now we're getting closer to the word España. But by now it's a mostly rural space. No, all the big cities Romans had created are abandoned, is ill communicated. But for the first time, at least nominally, it is an independent political unit. So this idea of the Visigoth Spain, of this España, will become mythical in the future. Why? Because in 711, while the Visigoths are still ruling Spain, Arab elites and their North African allies invade and quickly conquer the peninsula because it was a vacuum of power. And only a stronghold of Christians remains in the north, will be named a Kingdom of Asturias, and they will start pushing back slowly towards the south in an 8th century war enterprise known as the Reconquista. So the name already is meaningful, Reconquista, like it was theirs before, and the Arabs are the invaders, and they must take over, what was the glorious Kingdom of Spain. So just to give you an idea, the maps are hard to read, but just follow the colors. In the first map is Spain in 1910, and the north part is Christian, the pink, and the rest is Arab. So the Christians are already starting to push south. 1037, we see how it's increasing. Different Christian kingdoms start to sprout. In the north, we have the Kingdom of Navarre, will later become the upper part of the Basque Country, the County of Barcelona. These are the origins of Catalonia and Leon and Castile. Over there, here, 1150, they are growing south. The Kingdom of Portugal appears, and between 1212 and 1492, the whole of Spain becomes Christian. 1492 will be the year when the last Moorish kingdom of, does anybody know which one was the last Moorish kingdom?
Granada.
Gary?
Granada.
Granada, muy bien. Is conquered by the Catholic monarchs. So all of Spain is Christian by now, is united by a single faith. And is nominally one kingdom, but not really. There are all these Kingdom of Aragon, the Kingdom of Castilla, the Old Kingdom of Galicia. They remain in named kingdoms, and they retain some freedom and differences among them. So what happens in the meantime during these 8 centuries? And I think this is very important, and I always insist this in my classes because nowadays, we have all these horrible images all the time of destruction in the Arab world and connection to terrorism and things like that. And back in the Middle Ages, they were the most advanced in thought and in techniques of all peoples in Europe. So what we owe to them is a language. More than 10,000 words in modern Spanish are from Arabic, all words starting with al. Philosophy and literature, they reconnect Europe with its classical past. Scientific and technical innovations, things, for example, that are very important, like long-distance sailing, the compass and the astrolabe that will enable the discoveries later on, in the 15th century. And then in the Christian kingdoms, what's happening is, well, of course, the Spanish language is born, in the 11th century, and also the other 2 Romance languages that come from Latin, Galician in one corner in the northwest, and Catalan in the other corner. Why? Because they're isolated by mountains, so they develop a different kind. Possible to understand, not like Basque, that's a different creature, but Galician, Catalan, and Spanish, and later on Portuguese are closely connected. But after 1492, after the union of Spain, and until the 19th century, the literature that will be produced in Spain will be mostly in Castilian and the language of power, the language of administration. A huge military defensive system is put in place, no castles, fortresses, city walls, and churches, cathedrals, new towns start to spring along the pilgrimage road that connects Spain, the northwest of Spain, where supposedly is the tomb of St. James, to all of Europe. No? So all of Europe starts being connected by this pilgrimage road, and tons of new cities start to appear along the road. And these new repopulated cities are giving freedoms to attract new inhabitants. Oosh, the other one. So just to give you a visual idea, how different these two civilizations, the Arab one and the Christian one, are in Spain. Here we have an image from La Alhambra, the Granada, very delicate, specializing in interiors, in domestic spaces, in the case of La Alhambra, and then the defensive system of castillos that will give the name to Castile. So, to become a unified Christian kingdom, it took the Christian kings and queens of Spain 800 years. But to become the largest Western empire, it took 3 months. From the sailing of Columbus in August 3rd to the arrival to the New World in 1492. So all of a sudden, Spain, who had just finished this 8th century war, started this huge new enterprise. I think it's better if I do this. Yeah. So what happens? That becomes an empire that is way too big, way too fast. So Spain not only expands over the New World, but also through Europe, through a series of marriage with other royal families and inheritances. So big part of what is today Germany and Central Europe, Flanders will be part of Spain. But the downside of this, the too big, too fast, is that there is a ramping inflation in Spain. There is all this gold coming from the New World, so the money starts having any value, and poverty is more and more a problem. There is a loss of population because people are going to the New World, growing disparity among classes, and by then the empire is almost to the verge of collapse. By the end of the 17th century. So this is as I will say, this was a favor. The last Austria or Habsburg king dies in 1700. So we always remember that was the year. There is a change in dynasty, but it's not an easy change. There is a war for the succession of the Spanish throne. The last king, the last Habsburg dies without descendants. So there are 2 main contenders for the Spanish throne. Carlos Charles of Austria, and Philip. He will become Philip V of France, a Bourbon king. So Spain is divided, supporting the 2 candidates. And this part, the yellow part, will support the Austria candidate, this part, the Bourbon candidate. So when the Bourbon wins, Catalonia, this part will find that they have supported the wrong candidate for the throne, and they will suffer for it. Many of their old freedoms will be withheld because of not having supported the new king. And Madrid becomes to be a more and more powerful center of the country because the Bourbons have a centralizing policy. They want everything to radicate in the center. So, 19th century, we're cruising here. 19th century starts with war and tragedy. Napoleon invades Spain. Is a very different kind of war because for the first time It's not just one professional army against a professional army, but the people, the peasants, the people of the cities. They stood up against the French, and they fought in the streets in what is called now, we adopted in English the word from Spanish, guerrilla, guerrilla war. So what this produced was that for the first time in Spain, there was not a sense of we are a kingdom with a king that represents us. There was a sense of we represent Spain, we the people, a sense of what is called an imagined community. More and more getting close to the modern sense of a nation. But the 19th century is a century of decadence because of the War of Independence. The colonies take the occasion to get independent. So Spain only retains the last colonies of Cuba, the Philippines, and Puerto Rico. It's a nation in decadence. And one phenomenon that starts to happen that comes together with Romanticism and the search for roots and for identity is the proliferation of literatures in the native languages, in the languages that had been forgotten until then. They were mostly oral. So we start having poetry, mostly poetry, to start in Galicia, in Galician, in Catalonia, in Catalonian, and it will be much, much later that we'll get literary manifestations in Basque, but especially Catalan and Galician literature will be developed by now. So just to give you an example, of two things. One, how close the Romance languages are in the peninsula, and two, this feeling of hostility, of having been marginalized during centuries that starts to develop in these peripheral regions. So this is a little bit of a very famous poem by Rosalía de Castro. She's called the mother of Galicia's nationalism because she writes the first book in Galician in the 19th century, in 1863. So I'm going to read in the original Galician because you can read the English. So she says, Castellanos de Castilla, tratade ben os galegos. Cando van como rosas, cando ven como negros. So Galicia was a very poor region. They had to go during the harvest season to Castile, to harvest the wheat, and they were like treated terribly. So she has this voice of defense of her people. And another example. This is from a Catalan poet, end of the 19th century. The end of the century is arriving with this growing sense of decadence in Spain. By 1898, we have lost the last colonies, and by then the sense of, oh my God, we're a horrible country will be like already established. But so, I have a Catalan speaker, right?
No.
No, you don't speak Catalan? A little bit? Would you like to try to read the Catalan for us?
Okay. Després s'aixeca al cel enorm l'envaiada testa amb un gran gesto tràgic perplexa damunt les mortes nins i se'ns torna orfe de llum sota del sol que cremà vacil·lant pels camins inolvidables perdran liangujament la llarga cua.
Excelente.
Okay,
thank you very much. So, as you know, Spain has been identified with a bull many times because of bullfighting, and also because it say that the shape of Spain is the shape of a cowhide. So in this poem, Joan Maragall is making this metaphor of a blind cow, as the image of Spain, a cow that has lost its path, is just going by rote memory and doesn't have a future ahead of her. So we can see they were not thinking highly of Spain already then. So the past explodes. We have been seeing how there is growing conflict throughout the centuries among these binarisms between Catholicism and secularism, tradition and modernity, centralism versus regional and national differences. So after the Spanish Civil War, that is actually putting all these things in fight with each other, the victory of Francisco Franco will mean the victory of the first element in these dualities of Catholicism, tradition, and centralism. So do you think the regions that were starting to develop a sense of nationality were happy? Not really, no? The Galicia, Basque Country, and Catalonia are very much repressed during the 40 years of the dictatorship. They are forbidden to speak or to use their language only in the family or in the street, but not in the schools, not in the administration. So 40 years later, Franco dies, the monarchy comes back, the same dynasty, the Bourbons, that arrived to Spain in 1700, but with a twist because it's going to be for the first time a constitutional king, a constitutional monarchy, meaning that the king does not represent the nation, doesn't have an executive power. The nation, all the power is in the nation, is national sovereignty, and the nation is ruled by a constitution. A constitution that is voted by all Spaniards in 1978, and is the constitution we still have today. So, Galician style, with a question mark. So this constitution establishes an autonomous system, and this means that there is a central government, in Madrid, and then there are regional autonomous governments. And something that they take very good care to do in the Constitution is to establish no difference between the so-called historic nationalities, Galicia, Catalonia, and the Basque Country, and the other regions. So all of them are designed exactly the same, with the same kind of government, the same kind of autonomy. So the historic nationalities are not going to be happy about this. The nationalist problems persist. We have vast terrorism that is luckily over. So far so good. And then Catalan claims for a different and more autonomous treatment. They insist, they are absolutely different from Spain and from the rest of the regions, and they want a different kind of autonomy. So what happens during the years of democracy since 1975, 1978, is that the different central governments in Spain, I love this vignette, there are many political parties in Spain. It's different than here, with the two main parties. And there are so many different parties that it's hard for one party to achieve majority. So they need to establish alliances with the other parties. And one of the parties that had a lot of votes was the Catalanist party. So in order to, get their votes, these are caricatures of the different presidents that Spain had during democracy. Felipe González, Aznar, Zapatero, and Mariano Rajoy. This is the president nowadays. So the dragon is the symbol of Catalonia. It's St. George and the dragon is their symbol. So first is a baby dragon, keeps feeding it. And now Mariano Rajoy, the current president, has this monster. It's like, venga, dale, go, try to kill it. And he's dressed like St. George, but chances of success are not high. So what are today's challenges? Right now, and this, well, besides economic problems, but we're not going to get into that now because we don't have any time. There are two things that worry the Spanish population. Vast terrorism has stopped, but there is a new threat. The ISIS militants claim Spain as part of their historical legacy because they were there first. Al-Andalus, all that huge part of Spain belong to them. And then Catalonia, feeling like in the times of the poet Maragall, the one of the blind cow, left behind by a worthless Spanish state. They are richer, they are more powerful. Why should they depend of this Spanish state that cannot take care of the country? Is now defiantly ready to take its destiny in its own hands. So now we are arriving to the pressing problem nowadays, the conundrum, the big interrogation mark at the beginning of this lecture. So there is growing unrest in Catalonia. Catalanist independentist parties arrived to a coalition, and this past fall, in October 1st, they called for a vote for independence. This was the question that the Catalans had to answer. Do you want Catalonia to become an independent state in the form of a republic? So, what are the possible problems with this question?
They don't know what a republic is.
That for sure. I mean, there was a short-lived republic, in the 30s, and after that came the civil war. But right now, Spain is a constitutional monarchy, and there is a constitution that the Catalonians also voted, in 1978. So asking this kind of question in a referendum, would it be constitutional? No, it was directly against the constitution, and it was declared so. So I was always like smiling. I mean, smiling with irony, because I like to watch the Spanish news while I cook, and during the weeks and the months of this referendum shaping, this is the Spanish Central news. They kept talking about it like over and over. The illegal referendum, because the illegal referendum that will take place, the illegal referendum, they were hammering, that was illegal. But it took place, in October 1st. And as you can see here, I don't know if you can you see? But I can tell you if not. The turnout was only 43.03% of the population. And of these 43, the majority voted yes, 92%, but this is not representative of the region. So number one, it was contested by numbers. Number two, it was contested by the authorities. So the Spanish state fall upon Catalonia with all its power. Repression in the streets of people that were going to vote, because that was considered illegal. And after that, and after they declared briefly independence, the Spanish government decided to implement a now infamous article of the Spanish Constitution, Article 155, that says if any part of Spain is rebellious against the Spanish state will take over, direct rule over that part. And well, this is just a joke over here. I'll translate quick. It says, but there are two people talking, and this one is just asking. But according to what you are saying, if only 4,000 people in total voted, and of those 2,001 were in favor to the yes, are you going to proclaim independence? And these guys say, I can see you through, Españolista. And this is what happened. Catalonia became deeply, sorely divided between Catalanistas y Españolistas. And the social fracture is still painful, no? But especially during last fall, it was like families broke apart, neighbors, no, everybody, and the insult of fascista, franquista, no, like you are for Franco, was given to the people that were not for independence. So it was becoming more and more radicalized. So what's going on right now? Just going back a little bit, in October 27th, the Catalan parliament unilaterally declares Catalonians independence. No? So do you remember the referendum in Scotland some years ago for independence? Was, you like that? Are you Scottish?
Yes. To intervene,
Uh-huh.
there seems to be tremendous parallels. The biggest part of the Catalans that did not participate were reflective of the same part of Scotland that didn't participate. And it was the same people. It's usually the older people who have their welfare and their retirement and that whole thing tied up with the central government. And they're scared to death to cut that tie. While many of the others are don't have that they don't have that link.
They have nothing to lose.
Exactly. Very much so.
And they have an ideal. Yeah, there is a big generational divide also and also urban versus rural. You know? There is now I mean it's mostly in good humor, no, but a new party has started claiming for the independence of Tabarnia, and Tabarnia is Barcelona and Tarragona, the two regions that are more urbanized and they are more for still being part of Spain. No? So this comedian has started this party, and now they have a big following. No? For the Republic of Tabarnia. No? But going back to Scotland, no, yes, there are all these parallels, but what was the main difference in the Scottish case? It was legal. Exactly. That it was pacted with the British government, no? And this was never. It was unilateral. No, it was
You know, that ties right back to our Civil War.
Excuse me?
That ties right back to our Civil War. I think the underlying thing for the Catalans is the fact that when you make a union, you can have a divorce. That's the same thing that happened in our Civil War. If you can come together, then you can also leave. And the central government in both cases said, no, you can't leave. I realize there's a constitution there in both cases, but I also understand their point of view that you can leave a union. If you make a union, you can leave a union. Philosophically.
Yeah, and if there were a huge overwhelming majority for independence, yes, but in this case the big problem is how divided it is, no, because it's almost 50-50, no, as I say. So what happened after they declared independence? That businesses started to freak out. And first it was the main banks, no, even CaixaBank, which was like the flagship of the Catalonian economy, was the first one leaving, like shortly after the 27th. And then after that there was a free for all, everybody leaving, no, and very iconic industries in Catalonia left because they felt insecure, no? And this drainage of industries was also starting to worry the population and started to change some minds. But this is happening in the background. In the main stage, the Spanish central government invoked the Article 155, Star's direct rule, and calls for elections in Catalonia on December 21st. No? And this just happened, this last December. And that time, the turnout was much bigger, it was 79%. No? But this didn't help because the votes were almost evenly split. It was even more complicated than that because there was one party. Now they call the Spanish parties that have a representation in Catalonia, they are called constitucionalistas. No? So now it's the confrontation between constitucionalistas and independentistas in Catalonia. So one of the leaders of one of the constitucionalistas parties had the most votes. Does it sound familiar? But the independentistas parties, I don't have all the parties here because they didn't fit. As I said, there are many parties in Spain. But just to give you an idea of numbers, no, these two here, these are independentistas. So if they join their votes, they have more than the one person that received the most votes. So in theory, this person should be the new president of Catalonia, but she will never be because she doesn't have enough numbers. All the constitucionalistas parties together, they don't have as many votes as the independentistas, but the independentistas, they don't have that many over the constitucionalistas, so it's really almost 50-50, no? So if you guys have been following a little bit in the news, do you know what's happening right now? Like the most recent stuff? No? Well, because they broke the law, they acted illegally, some of the main Catalan leaders were put in jail. In jail, not in Catalonia, but near Madrid. And the president of Catalonia, who declared briefly independence, flee to Brussels, and he calls himself president in exile of Catalonia. He's not. How do you say when you lose? Like when there are two candidates and one of them lose, they concede. So he's not conceding. No, he says like he is the elected president of Catalonia and is creating this whole narrative of, I am like the glorious Catalan leaders of the past, during the Franquist years that had to go into exile to carry the torch of Catalonian freedom. So there is this whole discourse, that for me is very interesting because I study nationalism, but it's also very destructive. It's not allowing any course of action, to take place. And so since the parties who have the majority has said, we want the guy in Brussels to be the new president, and the parliament.
Skype president.
Yeah, Skype president, yeah. A telematic president. And the lawyers in the parliament said, no, this is sorry, no, this is not possible, it has to be in person. So if he goes to Spain, he's going to be put in jail immediately. Yes?
Did the Balearic Islands vote in this election?
Good question, because they also speak, well, they wouldn't say Catalan, they would say Mallorquín. It's a dialect of Catalan. But no, they are a different autonomy. And they didn't vote. Catalonia, the Balearic Islands, Valencia, south of Catalonia, were part of the same kingdom at one point. So in all three regions, Catalan is the autonomic language. But no, they didn't vote. It was only the northeast. So with the impasse with Puigdemont, the ex-president or the current president, we don't know. Then they say, well, then we're going to elect one of the guys in jail. And the parliament said, well, you can't. They're in jail. Same problem. So at this point, right now, there is no one. There is no one. So the Spanish central government is still having direct rule over Catalonia. They keep bickering about who is going to be what, because also the independentist parties, they are very different from each other. So they have all these inner fights. Sergio, you were going to... No? But no, Sergio is half Catalan. He's a friend visiting. This is why I called upon him to read the poem before. Yeah, right now is the biggest impasse of our history and is creating a constitutional crisis, not only inside of Spain, but also this is extending into Europe, because with Puigdemont, the old ex-president or current, we don't know, in Brussels, he's knocking at every door saying, "Hey, freedom for Catalonia!" And the countries of the European Union, they're like, shh, shh, because they have the same problem in many of the different European countries, so they don't want this to start being like a general epidemic of small regions wanting to become nations. So yeah, this is the right time to give this talk, I tell you guys. It's happening in front of our eyes. And I wanted to almost finish with some hope, because we read a fragment of the poem The Blind Cow by Joan Maragall of 1893. And this is another Catalan poet, Salvador Espriu. He wrote during the years of the dictatorship, and he managed to write in Catalan. And he had a distinct characteristic. He wrote a lot about the situation of Catalonia and the situation of Spain in his poetry. And he would use a funny name for Spain. He would call Spain Sefarad. No, not Spain, but Sefarad. Does anybody know what Sefarad is?
It's the Ladino name for Spain, from the Jewish community.
Exactly,
Spain.
exactly. For the Ladinos, for the Jewish community that was expelled from Spain by the Catholic monarchs that wanted to unite the country around the Catholic faith, Spain was Sefarad. So he uses the name of an exiled community, not to name his own country. And I think it's a beautiful poem. Would anybody like to read it aloud? The English version? I'm not gonna force into Sergio the Catalan again. Someone with a nice voice that doesn't have a Spanish accent would like to read it. Eric,
I'm sorry, my eyes aren't good enough to see that from here.
you cannot read it?
I don't know, see. Habilidades necesaria y...
No.
Oh.
In English.
In English,
for,
okay, I'm
for
sorry.
everybody.
Oh, where,
Can you read? If not, I'll read it. It's fine.
I'm sorry, my eyes aren't good enough to see it from here.
I'll go ahead. Go ahead. You,
Sorry.
If you guys can read it, just follow, no? So it says, sometimes it is necessary and forceful that a man dies for all his people, but an entire people must never die for just one man. Always remember this, Sefarad. Secure up the bridges of dialogue and see to understand and respect the reasons and the varied languages of your children. Let the rain fall gently on the seeded fields, and the air to pass like a calming hand, smooth and benign over your ample fields. May Sefarad live eternally, in order and in peace, in its labors and in its well-deserved freedom. So I think this is a nice reminder of where we were in 1960, no? And the freedoms that we have achieved and the peace that we deserve, no? And yes, there is conflict, no? But there are all these different possibilities that were latent during Spanish history, no? That this poet picks up really well in this poem that calls for bridges, no? And not for chiasms. And now, to end with a funny note. So, small reason to smile and hope. So, during the very the tumultuous times in the fall, when Catalans were in the streets protesting, the repression of the Spanish government, every single night they would go out into the streets with cacerolas, with pans, and spoons, protesting. And they would especially protest in front where all the Spanish police were quartered. And one day this happened. There was una cacerolada, a protest, and one Spanish police went out into the balcony and started to sing un fandango. It's a kind of Andalusian song. Eric knows music, so. And this is what happened. So this is Andalusia meets Catalans. Oh no! I need to work over here. Just a second. I guess I need to go to the. Do this.
Is it a video?
Eh?
Is it a video?
Excuse me?
Is this a video?
Yeah, it's a video.
Yeah, so just exit full screen from PowerPoint and pull up the...
Okay. And then?
Have you exited full screen?
Okay. Let me see. So I exit full screen, but it's not reflecting that I have exit.
Right. They're different screens.
And how do I do that? In the main one. I need
you can turn it down from your computer without pulling it up.
Would you come and help, please? Because I thought this was that, but
No, it's just like there's two
Yeah.
screens.
but it's not doing anything.
Yeah, so you just click it here. It'll open up on here. Is it?
Okay, maybe we can do it.
That's the video, right?
Yeah.
Nope. Is it too loud?
Okay, you can just hear it. This is the guy singing. You have to imagine it. Ole! The whole street stops and they all come together. Ole! No, at the end. So I thought it was a nice way to end this, hopefully. This whole unfinished project business. So we have a little bit of time if you have questions.
What's happened to the economy in Barcelona that was once so strong? Is it much weaker now?
You mean as of the last months or in
The last 2 years, let's say.
the last 2 years? Well, since the crisis started in 2007, 2008, it was affected, like all of Spain. And that was one of the reasons of the increasing desire for independence, because they thought that Spain was dragging them down. No, but this is still a strong economy. It's very strong, and hopefully, if things settle down in politics and banks and businesses start to come back, it will be as strong as it was before.
You haven't said anything about the Basques, and I'm wondering, because
Yeah.
Ika is out of
You
business,
notice.
is that
Yeah, because I thought that would be a reason for yet another different lecture. No? But no, I mentioned it as part of the three main the historical nationalities. But what would you like to know in special?
Well, as far as I can tell, there's not much going on with the Basques now.
No?
They're very quiet about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, since ETA surrendered their weapons, it has been calm. It's a thriving region. They have an educational system that very much supports Basque language, Euskera, and Basque traditions, but without the spirit of confrontation that there was in the Catalan educational system. But for example, what I told you about the repression in Catalonia at the beginning of the 18th century because they supported the wrong king, the wrong candidate, that has become a determining date. I mean, 1714, that was the date when their all freedoms were taken away. And for Catalans that were educated in the system nowadays, that's the moment of the big repression, of the big, when Spain became their jailer, and they stopped being their own nation.
No, I mean, regarding his question about the Basque Country, so, I mean, from my point of view, and that's my very personal feeling about the whole process, which is, of course, very complicated, but everything is a matter of economy. The issue with the Basque Country, they are now so in peace because they have such a very good deal with the central government.
Exactly.
They somehow collect all the taxes that they keep all the taxes that they collect.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, the Catalonia they want the same treatment, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the government cannot do that because it's much bigger. So this could make the Spanish economy to collapse. All the Catalonians. But of course, the Basques are, say, okay, we have a very good deal. We are happy with these people, So what's the point of So actually, I think they are kind of scared about the Catalonia becoming independent because, of course, historically they would have to go for it, Otherwise, they would be very inconsistent with the historical complaints. But they don't want. They don't want to do that anymore because they are really rich and they have a very good deal with it. This is just my modest.
No. You're totally right. But this is the irony of history, that
Yeah.
that
They kill people more than
for so
1,000.
long the Basque Country have been taking the violent way, and like boom, butting heads with the Spanish government, and the Catalans were the people with the common sense, as we saw in that vignette. They knew how to negotiate with the central government, to get more money, to get more freedom for their educational system. And now is the opposite situation. The Basques are the smart ones who knew how to negotiate, and the Catalans are the ones choosing the confrontational way.
I find it very interesting that it's a couple of years ago that the Spanish government has invited back Jews of Sephardic origin to gain citizenship in the country.
Yes.
And I'm wondering, I'm a little bit wondering what the motivation is there. I mean, I think it's good-hearted. I hope it is. And I'm wondering if a similar thing might happen with the Muslims, the Moors, that were kicked out of Spain around the same time as the Jews were. And is there any accommodation being made for inviting Moorish people back?
That's it's complicated because the Jews were expelled in mass,
Yes.
300,000, boom, out. And that was a historical tragedy, for them and for Spain, because they were depleted of all the brain power and economic power, that their presence meant. But the Moors remain in Spain. They remain for almost 2 more centuries.
Yes.
And many of them mix with the population. Some of them remain in, agricultural areas of Spain. They were the ones who knew how to cultivate the land, using watering system inherited from the 8th century. And in 1609, there was a rebellion against the king from the survivors of the they were called Los Moriscos, no? Because they were being more and more encroached, like their lands were taken over. So they rebelled, and in consequence, they were expelled. But so many of them in the previous 200 years had mingled with the population that, like, their genetic and cultural presence was always there, no? So with the Jews there was more this sense of this historical injustice, no, that needed to be done. With the Moriscos, it was more difficult to undo, no.
You see the same sense of, I guess, animosity that you see in our country toward the Moorish people in Spain?
It depends. It depends. Officially, no.
Yeah.
No, like the North African countries are some of our best allies, no? Like the Kingdom of Morocco and the Kingdom of Spain, they are, you know, together. In the street, people can use like very derogatory language against, especially after the atentados. How do you say atentados?
The bombings in
The bombings in La Ramblas in
yeah.
Barcelona. Yeah, there is this feeling of what's going on.
Thank you.
Also because there was a huge migratory wave. Spain went through a huge economic boom since the 90s, so a lot of people from the sub-Sahara and above Sahara moved by the millions into Spain. So there is a big, like, actual new Moorish presence.
They're immigrants, yeah.
Yeah. Any more questions? No, Melissa? I love it because you were like nodding all the time. You were like the good student you like to look at in a class. Like, yeah. Well, thank you so much. Thank you for sharing this with me.